Hi everyone, welcome back. On Friday we had the pre-recorded special briefing where Massive talked about the current state of play within the Division 2, along with some of their goals going forward into Year 4 and Year 5. If you haven't already, I'd recommend you check out my live reaction to that stream. It was my last video. I'd say I came away from that briefing with two things: excitement and reservation. Today I wanted to go over what looks to be a very bright future for the Division 2 and franchise, but also touch on the things that I'm a little bit worried about as well. As always, your support is truly appreciated, so hit the like button below and subscribe to never miss a video. Let's talk. On Friday, Massive revealed a ton of info in the special briefing, a lot of which we already knew and a lot of which we didn't know. Countdown will be getting 4 difficulties, and Massive provided this very easy to understand graphic. Normal mode, which can be completed by solo players. I don't know if this has to be played solo, by the way, or if you can actually still go into that mode as a group. We've got hard mode. This is for 8 casual players. Unsure if this has matchmaking for this difficulty. Challenging, 8 match-made players. This is the difficulty in the mode that we have right now in the live game. And then lastly, heroic. And this is for the 4 to 8 hardcore players. Now this reveal was really awesome. It was very much a surprise as well, because I was only expecting one further difficulty for the hardcore players, because I know that's something that we'd all talked about a lot. This is something that we'd asked the devs for, so the hardcore players have something a little bit more challenging, but they've gone a step further. They've given us more options, and the idea of having the solo difficulty is just really awesome. Really good news. And this is just one example where I think Massive are really starting to understand what this community wants and needs. In a further graphic, Massive confirmed that we will see a loot buff for the second wave of hunters and more currency with that as well. New countermeasures coming to Countdown, extra challenges, and a system to stop players griefing others by kicking players before or during the extraction. I remember when this was a big problem in Outriders when it first went live, and they fixed that here. I've not actually come across that myself in Countdown, but it must be an issue. I can definitely see it being something that people do, so I'm glad this is being addressed. On top of this, Yannick confirmed in a tweet after the briefing that loot quality will scale with the difficulty as it does in the rest of the game. So I don't know if the challenging, what we have in the game right now is challenging quality loot. To me, it's more heroic kind of loot. So once the new difficulties come out, I don't know if the heroic difficulty will give you legendary tier loot. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. We're going to have to wait and see. But it's good to know that if you're the hardcore players and you're doing the hardcore mode, or you're doing the heroic mode, the 4 to 8 players, then you are going to get better loot overall than people who are doing difficulties lower than you. If there's one thing that was missing for me, it was confirmation of a new kind of map coming to Countdown. But that's me being kind of overly critical at this point. It's not something that I thought that we would hear about anytime soon. It would have just been nice. Countdown looks like it's shaping up really nicely, and it definitely has a bright future for me. Now, aside from Countdown, Massive confirmed the ETF will be returning. If you're a new player and you're unsure what I'm talking about, it's basically a group of players selected by Massive to assist the developers on the direction of the game going forward. You used to go out to their offices in Sweden. Obviously now that's not possible. I think it will be done from home, but it's really important. It stands for Elite Task Force. The ETF were important in giving us some of the best updates in the division. Massive confirmed that 2 further teams will be part of the ETF, one for PvE and another for PvP. This has to be definitely the biggest news to come out of the special report, mainly because it was such a big surprise to many. I had heard nothing about this returning. The last time we heard about the ETF was when Yannick stated there was a possibility it might return at some point in the future, but this was pre-Season 9 and TU15. Among many factors that I've talked about in previous videos, I think this really shows how successful Season 9 has been as well. I know I'm going a little bit off track here, but I'm pretty sure the reason why Yannick previously said that the ETF was something that they may consider in the future was basically dependent on how well Season 9 and TU15 did. And the fact that we're getting a Year 5 says to me it did really well. Moving on, confirmation that ETF is returning is, in my opinion, really great news, as it gives some players in the community a chance to have their say and help Massive shape the future of this game. If there was one thing that I really want Massive to do, and I'm sure they will, it's to pick the ETF members based on their time in the game, their experience, knowledge of all the systems, all of that stuff. Really pick the players that are the most committed to the game. If Massive can do that for both the PvE and the PvP groups, I am probably the most excited I've ever been for the future of this game. Okay, so it's not all good news, and I want to briefly move on to some of that's a little bit negative that I'll go over here. I feel it's important that I mention this because I do want to balance expectations. So we are still in the dark on the progress and release date for the Specialization revamp. Now, this was brought up on Friday's briefing. Massive confirmed the revamp will come when it's ready, with the following graphic. And of course, reading through the graphic, the Spec Revamp sounds promising, but we knew the Spec Revamp was coming a very long time ago. When the Intelligence Annex returned back last year, the Spec Revamp was first on the agenda, and this was October 21. So we're nearly 10 months since then now. Now that seems like a very long time to hear about the progress of the revamp. Ideally, I was hoping the briefing would have given us a release date of this highly anticipated revamp, but at the very least, some kind of understanding of where the devs are currently at. Has the system been built, or is it still being built? What challenges are they facing? How far off do they think they are? Just some kind of PSA, but unfortunately, nothing. If I had to guess, and this is a complete guess, of course, because I'm not a dev and I have heard nothing about the revamp at all, I think the revamp has been built, but I think the balance is causing them a huge problem. If the Spec Revamp is an MMO-light spec tree with various options and pathways and nodes and all that sort of stuff, with the amount of balancing already required in the game with the current systems and gear and whatnot, I can imagine this being a huge undertaking, a huge headache. Hopefully Massive can give us more info on the progress of this revamp soon. And look, before I move on, I do want Massive to take as much time as needed, and I know they will. I'm not asking for it to be pushed out unfinished. I think that's the last thing that any of us want, especially with such a huge revamp to what is considered one of the most useless systems in the game. I am asking for some progression that's more detailed than just it's coming when it's ready, as that's what we've heard for the last 10 months. Alright, so I do want to end on a negative / positive note. I hope you'll understand as we go through this. Massive showcased their known issues list. They confirmed this wasn't a completed list, but wanted to show exactly how things were being prioritized. Now, as you can see from this graphic, they are sorted by columns, and each issue has a priority rating as well, along with other bits of information identifying them. This list also includes issues planned for fixes in TU16, such as players joining Countdown to simply kill the first wave of hunters, then quitting the mode, and raising the cap on all crafting and optimization materials. A little bit of news there if you didn't know that already. So this transparency is really cool. And again, as I said before about the current team working on the game at Massive, this is exactly what I think the community likes to see. Transparency, graphics, all that sort of stuff. It worked really well in State of the Games, and I think the community hasn't changed in that respect. On the other hand, and this isn't related to the briefing itself, but I felt the need to mention it in this video, the TU 15.4 PC crash fixes have apparently fixed 60% of known issues. That might be true, but many PC players are still reporting issues with crashing back to homepage, crashing completely out of the game, whatever it might be. None of the things that I've talked about in today's video are important. when a significant portion of the PC community are still experiencing constant crashing in-game, and I want Massive to prioritize this. Morten Ryberg has said more fixes are planned, and fingers crossed they fix 99% of all the issues. But if they don't, Massive need to pour all available resources into making sure these problems are fixed, as there's no point in new content and talking about all this new stuff if PC players can't actually experience the game. Overall then, I'm very excited for what's been showcased. Yannick confirmed there are things planned not included within the timeline as well, so there is more than what we know at this stage, which again is really awesome. With that said, there are some concerns, and I do hope they are addressed as soon as possible. Let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. Thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate all of your support, and until the next one, Epic out.